All right, well, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining us for this very special World Elder Abuse Awareness Day Facebook Live event. I'm Sarah Hart-Weir, a special advisor for COVID-19 Disability Services to Missouri's Department of Health and Senior Services, as well as the co-chair of Missouri's Advisory Committee on the COVID-19 Equitable Distribution. June 15th marks a very special day, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. This is a global awareness day which was officially introduced by the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse and the World Health Organization at the United Nations on this day in 2016. This important day is in support of the United Nations International Plan of Action that recognizes the significance of elder abuse as a public health and a human rights issue. It is observed every year to provide an opportunity for communities around the world to promote a better understanding and an increased awareness of the cultural, social, economic, and demographic processes affecting elder abuse and neglect. We know that no community or country in the world is immune from the mistreatment of older adults. The color purple has been adopted as the symbol to raise awareness of elder abuse and the effects of abuse, neglect, bullying, exploitation, and later in our lives. Each year, we are asked to wear purple on June 15th to show our support in the worldwide effort to prevent elder abuse. Today, we have a very special panel discussion to help us not only recognize our 2021 World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, but also have a timely discussion around our efforts here in the state of Missouri to ensure older adults are protected and safe from abuse, neglect, bullying, and exploitation. I'm honored to be joined by a very esteemed panel, all wearing a version of purple today: Melanie Hyland, Steve Boland, Tim Jackson, Jerry Green, Christy Siller, and Nicole Gatlin. Welcome to each of you, and thank you for being with us here today. Before we get started on this timely discussion, I just want to go around and have everyone introduce themselves to the audience this morning. So let's start with you, Melanie.
Hi, thank you for having me here today. My name is Melanie Hyland. I am the Division Director for the Division of Senior and Disability Services. I've only been here a short while, but I'm very passionate about the work of protecting our vulnerable Missourians.
Thank you, Melanie. Steve Boland.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Steve Boland. I'm the Director for the Division of Regulation and Licensure for the Department of Health and Senior Services, and I am really happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, for being here. Mr. Tim Jackson.
Hi, I'm Tim Jackson, and I'm the Section Administrator for Adult Protective Services within the Division of Senior and Disability Services. And I'm in charge of Missouri's response to abuse, neglect, and exploitation in community settings like homes and apartments.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tim, for being here. Mr. Jerry Green.
Hello, my name is Jerry Green, and I am the Bureau Chief of I&I. Basically, what that is the intake unit or the CRU unit where all the hotlines come in of reference adult abuse. And I also manage the Adult Protective Services criminal investigation unit. So anything that we find that's criminal in nature, we have investigators that address those issues.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Christy?
Hi, my name is Christy Seiler, and I am the Bureau Chief for the Protective Service Unit. And our unit is responsible for initially responding to all reports of abuse, neglect, and exploitation that are received concerning our vulnerable adults in Missouri.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christy, for being here. And last but certainly not least, Nicole.
Thanks, Sarah. My name's Nicole Gatlin. I'm the Chief of the Adult Protective Services, the Bureau of APS Support. Our unit is responsible for Adult Protective Services policy, systems, training, data, and quality assurance.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nicole, for being here. Let's go ahead. We have a fantastic esteemed panel. Let's go ahead and dive into today's discussion. Melanie, if it's okay, I'd love to start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about how the Division of Senior and Disability Services addresses elder abuse in the state of Missouri?
The Division of Senior and Disability Services, DSDS, functions as the state unit on aging to ensure the protection of the elderly and disabled adults who are unable to provide or secure services for themselves by ensuring a safe and healthy environment. The division maintains the statewide toll-free telephone number 1-800-392-0210 for reported alleged abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation of persons aged 60 and older and adults with disabilities. DSDS is also mandated by statute to investigate all reported abuse, neglect, and exploitation involving seniors and adults with disabilities living in the community who are unable to protect their own interests. These investigations are handled by the Section for Adult Protective Services. The Special Investigations Unit investigates these cases when there are allegations of physical abuse, sexual abuse, caregiver neglect, and/or financial exploitation that contain a criminal component. These cases are often referred to local law enforcement and prosecutors. Adult Protective Services can also provide resources such as referrals, even when they don't have the need to investigate. Some people may be reluctant to call the hotline if they're not sure that an investigation is necessary. Knowing that our Adult Protective Services can guide possible victims to resources in their community may encourage them to make that call.
Melanie, thank you. That is a great overview of the important work that we at the Division of Senior and Disability Services do day in and day out. Could you just talk a little bit about why World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is so important to our division?
Of course. It gives us a great opportunity to raise positive public awareness about the effects of abuse, neglect, and exploitation on older adults, and shed a light on the great work that this office does to protect vulnerable Missourians.
Thank you, Melanie. We know abuse and neglect of older adults doesn't just happen to those who live in the community. Steve, could you tell us a little bit more on how the Division of Regulation and Licensure helps to combat elder abuse in facilities across the state?
Sure. The Division of Regulation and Licensure regularly inspects licensed facilities to ensure compliance with state and federal standards, and that includes long-term facilities such as skilled facilities, assisted living, residential, and intermediate care facilities. Our DRL staff investigates allegations of abuse, neglect, and exploitation that occur within those licensed facilities. Now, there are approximately 1,183 long-term facilities with more than 84,400 beds that are licensed and inspected by the section for long-term care regulation. DRL surveyors investigated a total of 2,470 reports in fiscal year 20 involving allegations of abuse or neglect of residents of long-term care facilities. And then of the facilities themselves, the self-report, there were over 1,667 in fiscal year 20.
And Steve, a similar question that I just asked Melanie, could you tell us a little bit about why World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is so important to the Division of Regulation and Licensure?
Absolutely. So World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is extremely important to DRL because it shines a really bright light on the conditions that we're on the lookout for all year long. And educating the community is pretty much key to eliminating it. We really need to make sure that the community is aware that elder abuse exists and it should not be tolerated under any circumstances.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Melanie, for talking about how important this day is to the department. Now that we know our department's role in investigating elder abuse, Tim, I was hoping as Section Administrator for Adult Protective Services, you could tell us what elder abuse looks like in the state of Missouri.
Thanks. Well, let's start by talking about the different kinds of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Abuse refers to an intentional or negligent act of harm on the part of a caregiver or a trusted individual that causes harm to an elderly or disabled person. Different kinds of abuses are physical. Physical abuse is the infliction of some kind of physical harm on another, like striking, grabbing, shoving, choking, that kind of thing. Sexual abuse, any kind of unwanted sexual contact. And then emotional or psychological abuse or bullying. Then there's neglect. Neglect involves negligence on the part of a caregiver or a trusted individual that also results in harm to the elderly or disabled person. This can be failure to provide for a person's medical needs, nutrition needs, personal care needs, or anything else related to what that person needs to live safely in the community in his or her home or other setting. We, of course, see a lot of self-neglect situations as well, where there's not necessarily a perpetrator involved, but the elderly or disabled person may be lacking the resources that he or she needs to, again, live safely in the community in his or her home or other community setting. And then finally, there are financial abuses like financial exploitation, theft, or scams and frauds, where a caregiver or a trusted person intentionally deprives an elderly or disabled person of the financial resources that he or she needs to continue to remain safely in his or her home or other community setting. The most common type of report that we receive for an individual in a community setting is self-neglect, of course, followed by financial exploitation.
Tim, thank you. And if you could just touch on this, obviously, each one of us and everyone out there listening has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about how this has looked different during the pandemic within the last year or so?
Absolutely. And, you know, I wouldn't say that it's different, although there are new scams out there and different ways that fraudsters get to our vulnerable individuals. But the biggest impact that I've seen from the pandemic is really the prevalence of abuse kind of being exacerbated by the environment that the pandemic presented. You know, COVID-19 really forced us all to be distanced, separated, and secluded in our homes. And that's really where abuse and neglect and exploitation really thrives, when vulnerable individuals are more isolated and not seen by family and friends, etc. It makes sense that when an abuse perpetrator doesn't think anyone will notice, they're more likely to perpetrate the abuse.
Thank you for that overview, Tim. Christy, could you talk a little bit about some of the leading causes of elder abuse?
Sarah, as people age, it can become increasingly difficult for people to stay involved and connected to their communities and families. As a result, older people are more likely to experience social isolation, which increases the likelihood of abuse and neglect. Elder abuse affects older Americans across all socioeconomic groups, cultures, and races. Abuse can occur anywhere when they are disconnected from social supports. Isolation is most common in the person's home, but can also occur in nursing home settings, assisted living facilities, and other institutional settings, and even in hospitals. While any older person is potentially at risk of elder abuse, we know that some are more susceptible to experience abuse or neglect more so than others. Based on available information, women and people over the age of 80 are more likely to experience abuse. Factors such as dementia or poor physical health can also increase the likelihood of someone becoming isolated, which in turn puts them at greater risk of experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Some other factors can also include dementia, mental health, and substance abuse issues of either the older person and/or the perpetrator.
That's super helpful, Christy. Thank you. Nicole, I understand that the National Council on Aging estimates approximately 1 in 10 Americans aged 60 plus have experienced some form of elder abuse. Some estimates range as high as 5 million elders who are abused each year. But could you talk a little bit about how prevalent elder abuse is in the state of Missouri?
Sure, Sarah. In Missouri, during fiscal year 2020, the Department of Health and Senior Services received and investigated nearly 41,000 reports of abuse, neglect, bullying, and exploitation involving seniors and adults with disabilities living in community and in facilities. That amounts to an average of 111 reports every day. And of those reports that were investigated by the Division of Senior and Disability Services, 70% included reports where the eligible adult was age 60 years of age or over.
Thank you, Nicole. And is this an increase of the reports received over the last year or so?
Yeah, unfortunately it is, Sarah. The number of reported cases is steadily rising each year, but it still vastly understates the extent of the problem. Because the victim often has an emotional bond with the perpetrator, seniors may be socially isolated and physically dependent on the perpetrator, someone who's often a son, daughter, or a caregiver, making it nearly impossible for them to report for fear of losing that last bit of independence. The National Center on Elder Abuse estimates that for every case of elder abuse or neglect that's reported to the authorities, as many as 23 go unreported.
Wow, that's super helpful. Thank you so much, Nicole. Christy, now that we kind of know how big of a problem elder abuse is here in the state of Missouri, what can we do to help address it? And most importantly, what can we do to prevent it?
Well, I'm glad that you asked, because there are many ways to get involved and to create a society that safeguards our seniors and prevents elder abuse from even occurring. But first, we as a society need to talk more about the issue of elder abuse. We need to raise public awareness about how to identify and how to report such abuse. We need to provide older people who experience abuse with a safe environment to speak out and to tell their stories. We need to challenge injustice and ageist stereotypes. We need to better develop and enhance services for older people who have experienced abuse. Target services to prevent abuse and to reduce isolation amongst our seniors. We need shelters and other supportive services specifically designed for older people who have been abused or who need to leave dangerous situations. Lastly, I would like to encourage everyone who is listening today to keep in contact and to talk with your older friends, neighbors, and relatives, to always be aware and alert for the possibility of abuse. Look around and take note of what's happening with your older neighbors and friends. Ask lots of questions and listen.
Thank you, Christy. Such important points about how we can prevent elder abuse in the state of Missouri. Jerry, I'm not going to let you off the hook here. I have a very important question for you because you have an important job here in the state of Missouri as the manager over the Adult Abuse and Neglect Hotline. Can you tell us a little bit about how we can report adult abuse in Missouri and what needs to happen in order to make a report?
Absolutely, Sarah. I'm happy to share that information. If you suspect abuse, neglect, bullying, or financial exploitation of the elderly or adult with a disability, you can make a difference and call Missouri's toll-free adult abuse and neglect hotline. That number is 1-800-392-0210. The hotline operates from 7 a.m. to midnight, 365 days a year. Or as an alternative to calling the hotline, you can also make a report online 24/7 at health.mo.gov/abuse at your convenience. Now, we encourage all mandated reporters to enter the reports online because it allows greater accessibility to the hotline for the public. In order to make a report, you will need to have the following information: an address for sure, a name if you have it, and what are the concerns and allegations about that elderly adult or vulnerable person with a disability.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for all the important work that you do for the state. I might just throw this question out there for the group. I'd love to hear if anyone has any success stories of the department's investigations of adult abuse that you might want to share with us on this important day.
I do have a story I'd like to share. It involves an elderly female here in Missouri, and she lived in the facility because she had diminished capacity because she had dementia. Although she had family in the area, she also had a grandson in South Dakota. He arrived one day at the facility and checked her out and told the facility management that he was going to take her out for the day. What he did is he then went to a local attorney and got a POA concerning his grandmother. She still had a house, and at that time he went to a realtor and told the realtor that he wanted to sell the house. He then took his grandmother back to South Dakota with him and set up another account with her name on it as well as his name. And then her disability checks that were going to that account. She didn't have any access to the account, and he was just taking the money. In addition, after the house sold, that money also went into that account. SIU got this case and we started working it and we figured out where she was at. We had the South Dakota authorities go check on her, and during the investigation found her in a dilapidated house with no running water. The only thing in the house was a can of SpaghettiOs. A neighborhood canvass was done, and the neighborhoods many times saw this lady walking through the area. So we worked with the South Dakota authorities, got her back to Missouri, got her back in that same assisted living facility, and we began our investigation where we were able to get all the financial records. And we had a paper trail that led us to about $120,000 worth of theft. With that information, the local prosecutor was able to file a Class A felony exploitation of an elderly charge.
Wow, Jerry, that's certainly a very powerful story. Thank you for sharing that with us this morning. I think we have a little bit of time left for maybe one question. And so, Tim, I'm going to put you on the hot seat here. Finally, as we've talked about the landscape of the prevalence of elder abuse in the state of Missouri, some of the reasons why, some of the solutions that we have, and of course, the tools that the Department of Health and Senior Services operates to support these individuals across our state. Maybe you could sum it up by telling us how we can help build strong supports for elders and promote awareness of elder abuse in our communities.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's all about spreading the word about the issue of elder abuse, and really World Elder Abuse Day, or WEAD as we like to call it, is a great opportunity. Some of the things that you can do are, first off, tomorrow on World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, June 15th, you can wear purple. You can take a picture of yourself and your coworkers or your friends wearing your purple, and you can post that on social media so that we can bring more awareness to this important day. You can display purple flags, ribbons, pinwheels. One of the things that we do at DHSS is we have placed pinwheels in the ground in front of our buildings to represent the number of substantiated adult abuse reports for that county. So for instance, at our DHSS offices in Cole County, we have a substantial number of flags out there in the front yard. If there's a way that you can light up a landmark in your community, the color purple, or use a purple porch light during June, you should really seek that out. For instance, in Kansas City, they're lighting up the Seahorse Fountain and the Waldo Water Tower. You can share information about elder abuse and scam prevention. That's a really good thing to do. We all kind of have to keep up with the scams and the fraudsters out there. So anything that you can do to help educate others about scams, and especially our vulnerable victims that are way more vulnerable to those scams, that would be increased and extremely helpful. As Christy mentioned, call or visit an elderly friend, a family member, or a neighbor. Having those interactions could be the one way that an abuse or some kind of situation might come to light. You can also volunteer to help older adults in your community in a variety of different ways. And really, I would challenge all of you to be creative. Anything else that you can think of to make anyone more aware of the prevalence of elder abuse and the importance of combating it is helpful.
Awesome. Well, I think we are just about out of time, so I just want to stop here, and I want to give a huge thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today for this incredible discussion and to help us mark World Elder Abuse Awareness Day here in the state of Missouri, and most importantly, help us call attention to this global health crisis. Before we wrap up here, I just want to invite our listeners to join in many discussions happening in Missouri surrounding the topic of elder abuse as we continue to lead the way to ensure older adults live a safe and healthy life free from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. The National Adult Protective Services Association is hosting their 7th Global Summit for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day today, June 14th. This is a free virtual WEAD event, and it can be streamed live until 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you can go on to www.napsa-now.org to enter the event. As the leader in promoting and partnering and protecting the health of Missouri citizens, The Department of Health and Senior Services encourages those who are qualified to help educate our communities, our organizations, our businesses, and each other about elder abuse. For more information on World Elder Abuse Awareness Day and the materials that you can share within your communities, you can visit www.health.mo.gov. Again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you for joining us for this important Facebook Live discussion. We hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Since 2006, June 15th has been designated as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, a day that recognizes the significance of elder abuse as a public health and human rights issue. No community is immune from the mistreatment of older adults. Seniors and people with disabilities may be socially isolated and physically dependent on the perpetrator, often a son, a daughter, or other family caregiver, making it a complex and difficult situation to report. The Department of Health and Senior Services and I invite you to join us in building strong support for elders for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, Tuesday, June 15th. If you suspect someone who is elderly or has disabilities is being abused, neglected, or financially exploited, report it to the Adult Abuse and Neglect Hotline at the link and number you see here on the screen.